The internet loves talking about the garbage Sonic games and the amazing Sonic games, but today, you and I are going into no man's land. We're going to be taking a look at a type of Sonic game that is frequently overlooked, the type of Sonic game that I just can't stop thinking about, the type of Sonic game that's just okay. A Sonic game that's painfully average. And for a lot of Sonic fans, the game that fits that description the best is Sonic Lost World came out in 2013, which was an interesting time for the Sonic franchise. 7 years earlier was the release of Sonic 06. I don't want to traumatize anyone, so I promise I won't talk about it long. To put it briefly, the game was so bad, it practically ruined the brand for years to come. The crazy thing is, Sonic 06 was a reboot meant to revive the franchise after it had kind of gone off the rails with weird side plots, cringe edginess, and strange gameplay styles. Fortunately, the next mainline Sonic game, Sonic Unleashed, would usher in a new era for the franchise. Unleashed is the first in a group of 3 games I like to call the mainline Boost trilogy. These games were Sonic Unleashed in 2008, Sonic Colors in 2010, and Sonic Generations in 2011. Each of these 3 games featured super fast-paced gameplay where Sonic could boost to reach absurd speeds, making him a nearly unstoppable bullet of death. The 3D boost gameplay's first outing was in Sonic Unleashed, and this new style of gameplay was widely loved by fans, although Unleashed was not without its flaws. Besides these speed segments, Sonic Unleashed controversially included beat-em-up segments where Sonic transformed into his alternate form, known as the Werehog, at night. These portions of the game bogged down the game's pace, and they didn't really serve much purpose other than to pad out the game's runtime. Even die-hard fans of Sonic Unleashed will probably agree that these segments were not the highlights of the game. Luckily, the Werehog beat-em-up segments were removed in Sonic Colors. We finally had a game that was just the boost gameplay that everyone loved from Sonic Unleashed. Then the next game in the series, Sonic Generations, did Colors 1 better by improving the level design. Generations levels had a better flow to them, tons of memorable moments, and they featured numerous potential pathways throughout the level, which gave a greater sense of freedom to the player and allowed for more replayability. In a way, Sonic Unleashed was like the sacrificial lamb of the franchise. It had to die so that its successors could truly flourish. The mainline Boost trilogy had an ambitious but flawed beginning, an improved middle, and a fantastic ending. Well, at the time, we didn't know Sonic Generations was going to be the ending. I mean, why would the developers stop there if the Boost trilogy had worked so well, right? Oh, how naive you are, viewer. In a Nintendo Direct presentation on May 17, 2013, Sonic Lost World was unveiled. We got an image of Sonic and Tails on the Tornado Plane in front of a strange planet made out of a bunch of hexagons. The only thing we knew was that this was going to be a Nintendo exclusive, releasing on both the Nintendo Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS. Now, this wasn't anything special, as Sonic Colors only a few years back was released on both Nintendo's current home console, the Wii, and their current handheld console, the DS at the time too. But the interesting thing about Lost World was that it was a part of a special partnership that Nintendo was doing with Sega on the Sonic the Hedgehog series. There'd be 3 Sonic games released exclusively on Nintendo platforms. Those games were Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games, Sonic Lost World, and Sonic Boom, which we'd find out later. It's interesting that Nintendo and Sega had such a strong relationship, considering they were once each other's biggest rivals. Like, I understand Sega releasing a GameCube version of Sonic Heroes because they released Heroes on all of the other major home consoles, but Sonic Lost World was the second mainline Sonic game to be a Nintendo exclusive. Eventually, more information about Sonic Lost World came out, and I remember not being super excited for this one, which is weird because I think this was the first major Sonic release that I wasn't hyped for. Something about Lost World felt different. One of the biggest differences was that Sonic had a run button. I remember this being a big controversy back then. To be honest though, I don't mind it. In fact, I kinda like how Sonic walks by default now. It gives you more control over him in situations that require a bit more caution. Another difference was the game's much brighter, more cartoony aesthetic. Sonic games have always been goofy and cartoony, don't get me wrong, but there was always that little bit of coolness to them, that edge that gave the series its charm. But Sonic Lost World was different. It felt a little too silly and kiddie. It felt safe. Like, for example, look at the stage themes. Grass level, desert level, beach level. Wait, this is a Mario game. In its main campaign, Sonic Lost World uses the exact same world themes as New Super Mario Bros. On the DS. They both have a grass world, they both have a desert world, they both have a beach world, they both have a forest world, they both have an ice world, they both have a sky world, and they both have a lava world. the only difference being that Sonic Lost World doesn't have a Stone Mountain themed world. Mario was a big point of comparison in the lead up to Lost World's release, specifically Super Mario Galaxy, which came out a handful of years earlier in 2007, with its sequel Super Mario Galaxy 2 coming out only 3 years prior in 2010. Mario Galaxy had a big focus on gravity. Mario could walk all around these small planets due to gravity pulling him downwards, and Sonic Lost World had very eerily similar concepts. Lost World's 3D level design had more of a focus on tubes rather than spheres, but the idea was the same. Heck, you could even highlight Sonic's various wisp powers in Lost World as Sonic taking a cue from Mario. Sonic has always had power-ups, but they were mostly things like invincibility, shields, and speed boosts. The power-ups always felt like a side thing that you could realistically go the whole game without bothering with, but in Lost World, the power-ups felt more like scripted set pieces, which was also the case in Mario Galaxy. It didn't help that Sonic Colors, which only came out a few years before Lost World, also drew comparisons to Super Mario Galaxy thanks to its outer space theme and the fact that Colors was the first game to introduce the Wisp powers. Speaking of the Wisp power-ups, I remember their inclusion in Lost World was met with some criticism. The Wisps made sense in Sonic Colors because the whole game was about Eggman using the alien Wisp creatures he found to power his machines, but in Lost World, the Wisps just kinda unceremoniously show up out of nowhere. Another thing that came out of nowhere is Sonic's new parkour mechanic. Sonic's moveset had remained pretty similar across the mainline Boost trilogy, with occasional changes, like Sonic Colors giving regular Sonic a double jump, most likely because of the abundance of 2D platforming sections in that game. However, Sonic Lost World introduced a completely new feature of Sonic's toolkit, Sonic being able to parkour. Assassin's Creed did parkour, Mirror's Edge did parkour, and Dying Light did parkour about a year after Sonic Lost World came out, so parkour was hip and cool at the time. Sonic over the years has fairly consistently tried to stay modern and fresh, whether that's incorporating popular musical genres at the time, like New Jack Swing with Sonic CD back in 1993, and ska punk with Sonic Adventure 2 back in 2001, or by taking inspiration from trends in gaming at the time, like edgy video games with Shadow the Hedgehog back in 2005, and the video game nostalgia boom with Sonic Generations in 2011. This constant reinventing of the franchise has had the unfortunate side effect of the series struggling with its identity for over the past 20 years, which led to the series having one of the most fractured fan bases I've ever seen. You've got fans of the classic style games, fans of the adventure style games, fans of the boost style games, you can go on and on, but the point is, for better or for worse, the series was almost always trying something new, and parkour was one of those things. Another new thing that Lost World added was a brand new group of villains, the Deadly Six. Before I can get into their role in the story though, I have to go over the story itself, so let's get started on that, shall we? Sonic Lost World begins with Sonic and Tails in a fight with Dr. Eggman. Their plane is shot down and they end up landing on the Lost Hex, a strange planet made out of a collection of hexagons. Sonic ends up meeting Zaz, the first member of the Deadly Six, a group of over a century-year-old aliens known as Zeddy, who appear to be working with Dr. Eggman, but as we find out, they're only being controlled by Eggman due to his magic conch thing. It's never really explained how he got his magic conch, but whatever. Anyways, Eggman is using a machine called the Extractor to absorb some of the energy from Sonic and Eggman's world, but unfortunately the machine is unstable, so Eggman stops the machine before it can destroy the planet. Sonic then fights the second Deadly Six member, Zombomb, and after their encounter, Sonic and Tails see Eggman having a conversation with the Deadly Six. Sonic recklessly kicks Eggman's conch away, which prevents Eggman from controlling the Deadly Six. The Deadly Six then use the magnetic field manipulation power that they apparently have to take control of Eggman's Badnik robots. Sonic, Tails, Eggman, and Eggman's two robots, Orbot and Cubot, all escape from the ensuing chaos. At this point, the story takes a pretty interesting turn because now Sonic and Eggman have to work together to defeat the Deadly Six and stop them from using Eggman's extractor to completely drain all of the life energy from Sonic's world. Sonic and Eggman have teamed up before in games like Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Advance 3, but it was always done at the end of the game as a last-ditch effort to defeat a more powerful foe. In Lost World's case, though, it was done after only the first two worlds. Here, Sonic and Eggman teaming up would last nearly the entire game, and honestly, this was pretty cool. We get to see a more vulnerable side of Eggman as he's really upset that he's not in control anymore, a change of pace from the usual situations where Eggman is the one orchestrating the conflict of the plot. Eggman is so desperate that he's the one to propose a truce between him and Sonic to stop the Zeddy. Probably my favorite Eggman moment is when he crashes out and delivers some of the coldest lines in Sonic history.
I'll get that from eating your black hearts, you Eggman wannabes! I will destroy everything you love and make you watch! As long as I can still strangle a Zeti, my hands are fine.
Eggman is typically pretty goofy, but he legitimately feels kind of threatening here, which is ironic considering this is the point where he's at his weakest. My only issue with the Sonic and Eggman partnership subplot is not even anything regarding them, but rather the effect that their team up has on Tails. Tails and Eggman spend most of their time on screen together bickering. Sonic tries to break up their fighting, saying that they need Eggman to shut down the extractor machine, which causes Tails to get really salty. Tails just comes across as super insecure and annoying here, which really seems to come out of nowhere. I mean, Sonic knows Tails is a genius, but their best chance at defeating the Deadly Six and stopping Eggman's machine is to work together with Eggman, as he's the most knowledgeable person in this situation. Tails' irrational behavior ends up nearly getting him hurt when he puts Cubot's head on the body of one of Eggman's badniks, which causes Cubot to briefly go aggro and attack Tails. Fortunately, Eggman of all people pushes Tails out of the way to save him. Maybe it's because Eggman knows that he'll need Tails' help to defeat the Deadly Six, maybe it's out of a sense of loyalty for their newfound partnership, maybe it's because he'd rather destroy Tails himself than let him die from his own mistake. Who knows? But it does add a bit of complexity to Eggman's character. Later in Silent Forest, the gang finds a strange capsule in the middle of the woods. Sonic, acting impulsively, tries to bust open the capsule, but Tails knocks him out of the way, causing Tails to be trapped inside of the capsule and teleported to whereabouts unknown. Eggman even seems legitimately empathetic towards Sonic's loss when Tails is kidnapped. Sonic's problems get even worse when Sonic's world is nearly completely drained by the Deadly Six using the extractor, causing Sonic to lose contact with his friends Amy and Knuckles. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Amy and Knuckles are in this game. I think the only reason why they were included in this game was to show Sonic that his world was being destroyed. Then, to make matters worse, even Eggman falls to his doom in Lava Mountain after being ambushed by Zaz and Zamom, but not before sacrificing himself to save Sonic. Sonic is all alone. The game honestly feels pretty sad here. Sonic's best friend Tails has been kidnapped, his friends Amy and Knuckles are trapped on a dying planet, and he even lost his new partner Eggman. As one last gut punch, Sonic comes face to face with a mind-controlled Tails who has unfortunately been turned into a robot. Well, this one isn't that bad because Tails is just pretending to be a robot, because in an earlier cutscene he messed with the Deadly Six's robot transformation program. Sonic manages to take down the Deadly Six, only for it to be revealed that Eggman is actually still alive and he only faked his death. Sonic defeats Eggman, saves his homeworld as well as his friends, and everything goes back to normal. To be honest, I don't really mind the story of Sonic Lost World. It has some neat interactions. I think it's interesting that Sonic actually makes mistakes in the story because of his impulsiveness, and I think Sonic slowly losing his allies adds at least a little feeling of urgency to the plot, even if you know that none of them are really gonna die. My only big problems with the story are Tails' random beef with Sonic and the Deadly Six's characters. The Deadly Six include Zaz, Zamom, Zik, Xena, Zor, and Zavok. Zaz is crazy, Zamom loves eating, Zik is old, Xena is every woman stereotype in the book, Zor is the emo kid, and Zavok is the deep-voiced leader. That's literally all you need to know about them. They're so one-dimensional, it's honestly a little funny at times. I didn't really care for any of them, but I'd say the ones I disliked the least were Zamom and Zor. Zamom mostly because of this one scene where he smacks Sonic in the face with a comically large sandwich.
Hey!
And I kinda liked Zor because he's at least self-aware of how much of a cliche he is, and he did legit have a few lines of dialogue that made me chuckle.
I gotta go tell the others the bad news. Giving bad news is actually the one thing I enjoy.
Overall though, I'd say these are some of the most forgettable Sonic villains in all of the video games. But enough about the story and characters, let's get into what we all came for, the gameplay. In a lot of ways, from a control perspective, Sonic feels closer to the adventure games than the at the time recent Boost games. In the Boost games, Sonic was designed to go really fast from point A to point B. Trying to go off of the beaten path or do slower paced platforming didn't really work as well. However, in Lost World, outside of jumping that occasionally feels a bit stiff, Sonic feels pretty free and fluid. It's easier to move him around. Like I mentioned before, he has a run button, and I believe this was to solve one of the issues with Boost Sonic, and that was how unwieldy he was to control when trying to do precise platforming. By giving him a slower base speed, it allows you to be a bit more precise when moving around. They also brought back the double jump from Sonic Colors to help with the platforming as well. I think Lost World struck a good balance between speed and freedom. Sonic also has a number of new techniques in the game. His homing attack is very different in this game. Unlike in previous games, you can't use the homing attack to dash forward if you don't have a target. Also, Sonic's homing attack travels in an arc now. Besides those strange changes, there are some legitimate upgrades to the homing attack in this game. Sonic can do a chain homing attack by locking onto multiple homing attack targets at once. This is super satisfying to pull off. Sonic also has a homing kick, which you can do by pressing the crouch button when you're in the air and you have a homing attack target. The homing attack doesn't work well on every enemy, so sometimes you'll have to do a homing kick to either take them out or get rid of their defenses before going in with another attack. Finally, and easily the most broken upgrade to Sonic's homing attack is Sonic's charged homing attack. If you have a homing attack target and you wait a while, the targeting reticle will change, signifying that your homing attack is charging. If you do a homing attack after charging it, you can do immense damage. As a demonstration, let me show you what the charged homing attack can do to bosses.
Because I'm letting you in, old man. Are you proud?
As you can see, the charged homing attack is pretty OP. Another one of Sonic's iconic moves that got an upgrade is the spin dash. You can jump while spin dashing, and you can get a boost if you hold the spin dash button before touching the ground again. In a way, it's kind of like a drop dash before the drop dash. Like the drop dash in Sonic Mania, Lost World's ground tech spin dash lets you regain your speed even after jumping. But I haven't even talked about the most broken part of Sonic's spin dash in this game. Did you know that you can spin dash infinitely in this game? If you spin dash and then press the spin dash button again, you'll stay in your rolling animation and you'll continue going fast without losing speed. The spin dash is like Sonic Lost World's equivalent of the boost. Sonic also has his bounce move from Sonic Adventure 2. The new parkour system does feel a bit janky, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually pretty fun to use. One pointer I can give is, if you're in parkour mode, you can't parkour after jumping unless you jump directly into another wall. So you can't be in parkour mode, jump straight up, and then parkour again. With the parkour system, Sonic can run up walls, run along the side of walls, and even run on the ceiling in some cases. In terms of Sonic's arsenal, he can also use the Wisp power-ups. Laser lets him zoom across the level on a path, Eagle lets him fly around, Hover also lets Sonic fly around, Asteroid lets him absorb nearby enemies and objects, Rhythm lets him bounce around, Rocket lets him boost upwards into the air, Drill lets him dig through the ground, and Bomb lets him destroy enemies. The Wisps in this game aren't amazing, but I think they do offer a cute little change of pace every now and then. As a whole, I think this might be the most fun Sonic to control in any Sonic game. Sonic has so many different moves and techniques in his arsenal, giving him considerably more options in how he can tackle levels, leading to a bit more variety in the level design. Speaking of the levels, let's talk about them. The game is split into 7 main worlds, each with 4 main levels. The first world, Windy Hill, is your familiar Green Hill clone, a grassy world with blue skies and an upbeat atmosphere. All of the levels are pretty simple, and it does a good job of introducing you to the game's mechanics. I really like how Lost World gives you the freedom to find alternate paths throughout the level, and often going off of the beaten path will reward you with goodies, which is always nice. One type of item you can find are red rings. By collecting all of them, you unlock Sonic's crazy fast, nigh invincible powered up form, Super Sonic. But I didn't bother collecting them all in this playthrough, because I'm just not a huge 100% guy, and getting Super Sonic just isn't enough motivation for me. If I see a red ring that I think I can get, I might go for it as a personal challenge, but going after all 140 of them? Nah, I'm good for now. The second world is Desert Ruins, a sandy desert world. Desert Ruins is the first world where it becomes apparent that every level in the world is not going to be based on the world's main theme. For example, Desert Ruins Zone 2 takes place in this cluster of honeycombs in the sky, and Desert Ruins Zone 3 takes place in this candy wonderland. The third world is Tropical Coast, which is the game's obligatory water level. Though, funnily enough, you don't really have to deal with too much water in this world. This world is not without its annoyances though, as in Tropical Coast Zone 2 and 4, you have to guide these gigantic pieces of fruit around the level, which can be a bit tiresome. One neat gimmick is that Tropical Coast Zone 3 is a level of almost nothing but rail grinding. Really brings back those Rail Canyon vibes. The fourth world in the game is Frozen Factory, probably my least favorite world in the game for the obvious reason of ice physics. However, even this world does have some cool stuff, like Frozen Factory Zone 3, which is a fun casino level. There's falling dice, poker chips, and huge rolling slot machine wheels. The fifth world is Silent Forest, which is a weird name considering it has my favorite music track in the game. Speaking of the game's music, the soundtrack for this game is great. Definitely one of the more underrated Sonic soundtracks. Besides Silent Forest Zone 1, some other awesome tracks are Desert Ruins Zone 1, Sea Bottom Seg, the song from Tropical Coast Zone 3, and Dragon Dance from Sky Road Zone 2. Sky Road is the sixth world of the game, which is basically Windy Hill but in the sky. Except for the last stage of the world, which is Desert Ruins but in the sky. This stage is at least a little more visually interesting than the other levels in the world because the level takes place during a thunderstorm. This world has this sky chase inspired level where Sonic is flying through the air. It's kinda awkward to control, but it was a neat little change of pace. Finally, we have the seventh world, Lava Mountain, which is ironically one of, if not the shortest world. The first level is just a boss rush, and the last level is just the final boss. So there's really only two standard levels in this area. One of those levels is a much harder version of the rail grinding stage from Tropical Coast. This was the first level that I got a game over on. No worries though, game overs in Sonic Lost World are essentially a slap on the wrist. You just have to restart the level from the beginning. The second of those two levels is the only full lava level of the world, which is broken up into segments by boss fights with Xena, Zor, and finally Zavok. Zavok's boss fight has two phases. The first is ridiculously easy if you use the charged homing attack. The second phase takes a bit more thought as you have to use Sonic's bounce to knock these blocks down to hit Zavok. After defeating Zavok, it's time to take down Eggman and finish the... Oh, that's right, the Flickies. Except for the last world, you have to fight a member of the Deadly Six as a boss in the second and last levels of each world. The bosses are fun enough, I don't really have much to say about them. However, in order to unlock the last stage of each world, you need to collect a certain amount of Flickies, these small animal creatures that you can find in the levels of the game. You can get them from doing things like destroying enemies and opening up capsules. If you don't have enough Flickies to unlock the boss stage, then you have to go back and replay stages to grind for Flickies. I do not like this. Having to go back and replay stages just to get Flickies to reach some arbitrary number is just dumb. This is a pretty blatant method of padding out the game so it lasts longer. Now, in the Wii U version of the game, there are these circus bonus levels that you can play to quickly gain a lot of Flickies. Another way you can quickly get Flickies in the Wii U version is by playing the Legend of Zelda DLC level. Sonic Lost World got 3 DLC levels, one based on the Legend of Zelda, one based on Yoshi's Island, and one based on Nights into Dreams. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play the Zelda or the Yoshi levels, as they're basically lost media now that the Wii U eShop is offline. However, from what I've seen of them, they look really fun. The Yoshi level has you getting eggs, kicking Shy Guys, and warping through pipes. It's so surreal it almost seems like it's fan-made. The Zelda level is definitely the standout though. It's fully 3D, Sonic is wearing Link's outfit, and they even made Sonic do the chest opening animation from the 3D Zelda games. The Nights DLC is still available on the PC version of the game, which is the version of the game that I played for this video, but sadly it's probably the least interesting of the 3 DLCs. Most of the level is just fighting old bosses with Nights into Dreams skins. Though I will say it is nice that this stage plays the remix of Nights in Reala from Nights Journey of Dreams. I guess it's also cute that the Flickies in this level are Nightopians from Nights. I criticize the Flicky requirements for levels, but they're not too bad honestly. Even in the PC version where you don't have the circus minigame or the Zelda DLC, getting to meet the requirements isn't hard since they actually lowered the amounts you need to unlock the boss levels. I only needed to replay 1 or 2 levels to get past the thresholds. But honestly, that's what makes it so dumb to me. You're only adding maybe an extra 20 minutes to the game's runtime by doing the whole Flicky requirements thing, so it's not like it pads out the game to a significant degree. If you're looking for more content, the game does have these question mark bonus levels that appear in Tropical Coast and Sky Road, as well as a bonus world called the Hidden World, which has 4 levels. Tropical Coast Zone question mark is basically another Sky Chase-like level. In Sky Road Zone question mark, you have to platform on these green block segments that start to disappear once you step on them. Finally, let's tackle the Hidden World. Hidden World Zone 1 is essentially an endless level where you kick these block-shaped enemies off of the stage. Defeating enemies gives you a bit more time, and the stage only ends once you run out of time. This is a good level to grind for Flickies, but at this point you've already beaten the game and there's only one other level that you need Flickies to unlock. Hidden World Zone 4. So this is a case of a good thing coming a little too late. Hidden World Zone 2 is probably the most different of the world's levels, as this stage has you flying with Tails on the tornado plane. You can't shoot enemies, so the only thing you can do is dodge out of the way so you can make it to the goal before time runs out. If time does run out, Tails will abandon Sonic to fall to his death. Hidden World Zone 3 is another level with block sections that disappear once you stand on them, but this level is in 3D, and there's also these yellowish block segments that will move once you step on them. Lastly, there's Hidden World Zone 4, a very strange level where you're in the sky, and you have to jump off of these spike bubbles to propel Sonic forward. As the level goes on, you're chased by these fluffy chomping spheres before eventually having to face off with a giant fluffy chomping sphere. That's it for the single player content in the game, but Lost World does have multiplayer content. I didn't tackle it in this playthrough because it's not in the PC version, but the Wii U version of Sonic Lost World has multiplayer. You can play the game in co-op where the second player uses various machines to help Sonic throughout the game's levels, and the game also has a versus mode where you can race against the second player. With that out of the way, I think I've touched on just about everything I wanted to regarding this game. So the next thing I want to do is look at what you all thought about Sonic Lost World. Oh boy, that's not good. But it's not bad either. Most people in the poll that I ran on YouTube said that Sonic Lost World is mid. Mediocre. Painfully average, you could say. You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna be that guy. Like most people, I used to think that this game was just okay. But after playing the game fully and giving it an honest chance, now I don't think Lost World is mid. I think Sonic Lost World is good. Not the best Sonic game ever, but just good. The game has its fair share of jank bullcrap like Zavok hitting me after I defeated his first boss phase, this meteor hitting me because the game made Sonic do an automatic animation, and getting killed by the rubber band AI of this tornado. The flicky requirements are dumb, the villains aren't good, and the whole Tails and Sonic beef subplot just comes out of nowhere, made even worse by the fact that the game acts like Sonic is in the wrong in that whole situation. But Sonic Lost World has so many cool parts that not only make up for its flaws, but make it into something I call an enjoyable experience. Sonic is probably the most versatile he's ever been in a video game with his abundance of different moves. The game has so many creative levels. Outside of a handful of stages, every level introduces a unique gimmick or idea. I like how the boss's gimmick will often show up in the level before you fight them, and I like how you fight them multiple times. It gives them a better sense of presence throughout the game, as opposed to just showing up and getting clobbered. It also gives them more opportunities to interact with Sonic. It's also cool to see Eggman interacting with Sonic. Eggman in general is great in this game. The music is great too. The visuals are vibrantly colorful. And those are just the major things that endear me to this game. I haven't even gotten into the little things that give Sonic Lost World a lot of charm. Like the candy-inspired level Desert Ruin Zone 3 being called Desert Ruin Zone 3 in the level title card. Or Sonic doing his wind animation in his snowball form at the end of Frozen Factory Zone 2. Or when Sonic runs on ice, it makes Sonic ice skate, and he even does a little figure skating spinning jump. Sonic Lost World is just a fun, silly time. And I think that's what kind of turned people off of it. It doesn't really have any of that edge that makes Sonic cool. There are no hype moments where Sonic goes super and fights an ancient water dragon with crazy rock music playing in the background. There's no moment where Knuckles is rapping about how he thinks Rouge is a baddie. There's no moment where Shadow pulls up with a submachine gun and starts spraying. The Sonic series definitely took the edge a little too far at times, but at the end of the day, that edge, that attitude, that coolness is a part of Sonic's identity. Sonic Lost World, by contrast, is a lot more lighthearted, and it never really takes itself too seriously, aside from a few cutscenes in the latter half of the game. Sonic Lost World doesn't quite feel like a Sonic game, but I think if you put that idea aside, treat the game as its own thing, and just appreciate it for what it is, I think you'll find something to enjoy in Sonic Lost World. If you can't get enough Sonic content, you can check out the other Sonic videos that I've done on the channel in this playlist here. That's all I've got to talk about for today though, so thanks for watching y'all, and have a great rest of your day. Also, yes, I know I didn't go over the 3DS version of Lost World. I'll get to it one day, maybe in a video where I look at multiple handheld versions and last-gen versions of Sonic games. But besides that, have a great rest of your day.